All right. Well, we're going to get started then. Welcome, everybody. This is the second in our series of three of Alzheimer's education presentations that we are doing for Brain Awareness Month in partnership with the Alzheimer's Association. And these are being hosted by Capitol Hill Village and Cleveland and Woodley Park Village. So we're happy you're here. If you missed the first presentation, I believe we do have a recording that we can send out. And then there will be another presentation, the third in the series, next week at the same time. You do need to register separately for that series, and that can be done through the Cleveland and Woodley Park website. So we'll put some links in the chat to all of that and make sure everybody has the information before we finish up for the evening. But for now, let's get into our presentation for tonight. My name is Alex Smith, and I'm one of the staff social workers at Capitol Hill Village. And I have the pleasure of introducing our presenter for the evening, Russell Misheloff. Russ serves as a community educator for the National Capital Area chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And in that capacity, he's developed and presented programs to inform various audiences about Alzheimer's and other dementias with emphasis on brain health, disease risk factors, warning signs, treatment, and research. His interest in brain health, cognitive impairment, and dementia stems from association with colleagues who have and continue to experience it as they age. He is now retired after a career with the U.S. Agency for International Development and with private firms engaged in planning, implementing, and evaluating international development and natural resource management programs. He is also affiliated with the Hearing Loss Association of America and for several years served as president of that organization's DC area chapter. He holds a bachelor's and master's degrees in economics, respectively, from the University of Michigan and American University, and a master's degree in international relations from the University of Pennsylvania. We are very grateful to have him here tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to him now. Before I do, one last reminder that if you have any tech issues, if you want to figure out how to turn on closed captioning, please speak up now. Let us know, and let's get that figured out. You are also welcome to put questions and issues in the chat. You can find, oh, yes, somebody, did I hear someone? Okay. Well, if you do have any issues, please speak up and let us know. You can also put them in the chat. It's at the bottom of the screen. There's a chat feature. Captions are also at the bottom of the screen under the three dots that say more. You can click on those and then click on show captions, and live captioning should pop up. So if we're ready, then I will hand it over to Russ.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Alex, and it's a pleasure to be here. Let me just very briefly summarize the first session, the major themes and major things that we covered. We described Alzheimer's and dementia, distinguishing between the two, and noting that Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. It is the most prevalent form of dementia, but is certainly not the only one. In terms of numbers, just to give you an idea of the size of the issue, approximately 7 million people in the United States have Alzheimer's disease, and close to 13 million people provide care partner services to those who have, or the disease. most of whom, incidentally, are unpaid. We're talking about family members, spouses, close relationships, um, providing, support services. Alzheimer's affects generally people of a mature age, mostly 65 and above. There is such a thing, of course, as early onset Alzheimer's, which generally occurs, in the 40s, but it is not common. It affects let me put it this way, of the 7, more or less 7.3, 7.4 million of people today living with Alzheimer's, close to 2/3 are women. We talked a little bit about, that and, some of the reasons for that. We also talked about some of the other risk factors which are not modifiable, and they include family, they include race. The prevalence of Alzheimer's in the U.S. is about, among the Black non-Hispanic population is about double what it is among the white non-Hispanic population. The Hispanic population, the white Hispanic population, has a risk factor of approximately 50% greater than the white non-Hispanic population. We talked also about modifiable risks and spent a lot of time on that because they are modifiable. There are things you can do to reduce your risk, to protect your health. They include your diet. They include exercise. They include treating factors such as diabetes, hypertension. They include social engagement. These are all things that you can do to substantially reduce your risk of developing Alzheimer's. They are not guarantees. There are people who do it all and still develop the disease. One of the interesting factors, that, and one of the reasons why we stressed this is that our studies, the Alzheimer's Association has done some studies which basically shows that people do understand, the factors, that contribute, to brain health and that reduce risk of dementia and other diseases such as Alzheimer's. However, while most people do understand that the percentage of people who actually follow their own advice and follow the prescriptions which they know of to reduce the risk is actually fairly low, which is why we sort of stressed that last week. Okay, today I'm going to cover the major themes are the warning signs of Alzheimer's, the diagnosis of the disease, how it's done, the stages of the disease. It is as we discussed last week, a progressive disease. We'll talk about treatments that are available. Okay, I'm going to go on at this point to share my screen and we'll take it from there.
Okay, they have it.
Okay, hold it because I'm sure I don't
Okay, I'll
understand
stay
it.
with you.
All right. Okay. Some of the signs of dementia. Some people may experience changes in ability to develop and plan work with numbers, resulting in trouble following a recipe, keeping track of monthly bills, difficulty concentrating and taking much longer to complete tasks.
I was probably spending 4 to 5 times more time preparing for something than I did, say, 5 or 10 years ago. Because of the my thought, I lose my focus, I get anxious, I wouldn't get to sleep. I was thinking of this, I was in my sleep, I was thinking about what I was anxious about, which was what I was trying to remember, which was I was trying to prepare, which I was trying to do. So it was a really a vicious circle of, so I was able to control it a lot, so that people on the wouldn't see things. It's what was disturbing me to do the things I used to do. So,
Okay, bishop move. Some people may experience changes in their ability to develop a plan of work.
4 to 5 times time preparing for something that I did 5 or 10 years ago.
I don't know what we're doing here.
Let it go.
Okay. Okay.
Alex, I mean, I am not at all sure what the problem is.
Okay, here's the next one.
Would it be better
Here's the
if,
next one.
would it be better if you did the, if you advanced slides?
Sure, you would have to send me the PowerPoint, but you're on the right slide.
You're on the right slide now. Just,
Okay. Can you take it from there?
no, she can't because she doesn't have it.
You'd have to send me the PowerPoint.
Just continue with the slide.
Okay. Driving, to a familiar difficulty, driving to a familiar location, organizing a grocery list, remembering rules of a favorite game.
People have difficulty with math or with reading in a way that's unusual to them. And once again, this is a change in that person. So, for example, we all know somebody who was never able to balance their checkbook, right? So that wouldn't be a warning sign for them. But if somebody who always balanced their checkbook to the penny suddenly was paying bills, the same bill over and over, and not able to balance their finances, well, that would be a sign for them.
Okay. Driving to a location. I'd like to go on to the next one.
Some people
No,
have difficulty
this is the thing where it's not going down.
uh, with
Russ, why don't you send me the PowerPoint and then I can share my screen?
Yeah, let me try to do that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to get out of the screen share if I can figure out how. First,
Yeah, stop show.
Here, I'll
Okay.
all right. Now I need to go into to send an email.
let's give everyone a 3-minute break while we figure this out. So we'll come back at
Okay.
7:30. If you need to use
Oh,
the restroom or get a glass of water, please do.
all right, now.
We'll resume at 7:30. Thank you
Gotta
for your
find-
patience.
I know. It's this. And that goes right here, right?
It opened.
Oh, right, open.
Hello.
Hi.
Could we use this opportunity to relay the link for next week? I had a problem with that today, or can you send it out at another time?
Yes, Frank just put it in the chat. So if you go to the bottom of your screen where it says chat and click on that,
Marge, I can also send it to you via email. I'll do that now.
all right, Russ, I got the presentation, I believe. Let's see. Here we go.
And Russ, I've muted you, so you'll need to unmute.
Okay, I have the presentation. So Russ, if you can unmute, I will share my screen.
Okay, I'm unmuted. And if we can
Great.
go, I guess, if you can turn it on to slide 32.
I
And
think we
we're
were
actually,
here.
yeah, 32?
We can
Okay,
go to,
well, we're going, yeah, okay, that's fine.
we can go back to 32.
Well, 32 is sort of the opening, but of this. But why don't you go to 32 and then let's move it along from there.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Why
all
don't you
right.
go down a couple more?
How's that?
Keep going.
Okay. There's two. We covered three.
Go down another one.
More?
Yeah, why don't we stop there
Okay.
and go on from there?
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Shall we resume?
Yes.
Can I go ahead?
Please do.
Okay, fine. Difficulty completing daily tasks. Finding a familiar location, a grocery list, remembering rules of a favorite game. Let's go to the next one.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
here we go.
Losing track of dates, seasons, and passage of time. Trouble understanding something if it is not happening immediately. Forgetting where they are or how they got there. And I would add, actually, forgetting occasionally why you are where you are. I know I went into the kitchen for a reason, and now I'm there and I don't remember why. Note also that, they tried to make it clear, but do not fully succeed, in my opinion, differentiating between the possible signs of dementia and what is typical age-related change. Recall at this time that the signs of dementia at this time are mild, and it could be related to age-related change, recognizing that Alzheimer's typically developed in people in their 60s, 70s, 80s. For a non-professional, even a well-educated non-professional, differentiating between signs, warning signs, and typical age, signs of typical age-related change is sometimes difficult to do. Let's go on. Okay. Confusions with different signs. So it may lead to difficulty with balance, trouble reading, problems judging distance and determining color or contrast, relating to issues of driving. Typical age-related change, vision changes related to cataracts. Let's go on. Go on to the next one. Alex?
Yes, here we are. Number 6.
Okay. Difficulty following or joining a conversation. It might stop in the middle of a conversation and have no idea to continue. I've seen that happen to people from time to time, where they begin telling a story. They may get interrupted, by somebody with a question. And then they go to continue, and they really can't quite remember where they were going with the story. Repeating themselves, trouble with vocabulary, forgetting words, trouble naming a familiar object or using the wrong term. Let's look at one of this. Let me see if I can open this. Can you open up the
video?
I'm not sure you can. Okay, let me see if I can. I'm not sure. No, I guess I can't now. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Putting things in unusual places. He or she may lose things and be unable to go back over time and find them. And they may accuse others of misplacing things, of stealing. That may occur more frequently over time. Typical age-related change is misplacing things from time to time and then retracing your steps to find them. I think the important thing to, distinguish here, and what makes it difficult, is what does from time to time mean? That can be age-related. Is it more than time to time? Is it changing over time? Is it happening more often than it did in the past? That may be a sign that it is more than a typical age-related change, but is a possible sign, of dementia. Okay, moving along to the next slide.
There we go.
Okay. Changes in judgment or decision-making, using poor judgment when dealing with money, paying less attention to grooming or keeping themselves clean. And they try to distinguish that from typical age-related change, and saying in the latter case, you may make a bad decision or a mistake once in a while. Again, distinguishing between what is age-related change and what, is a possible sign of dementia, making that distinction is difficult for someone, who is not, professionally able to do that. What does once in a while mean? If you make mistakes, make mistakes on money, make mistakes on a bill, neglect to pay a bill. If that happens once or twice, is that once in a while? What is more than once in a while? This is obviously not clearly defined, and therefore the distinction is not easy to make. Moving along to the next slide.
Okay.
Difficulty and ability to hold or follow a conversation. And as a result, people may withdraw from their hobbies, from their social activities or other engagements, have trouble keeping up with a favorite team or activity. Distinguishing that from sometimes feeling uninterested in family or social engagements, again, it's difficult to make that distinction. It is, however, important. Withdrawing from hobbies, social activities, or other engagements is important. Social engagements, hobbies, intellectual engagements, all things that stimulate your mind are among the things that we talked about last week under the category of brain health. Things that you can do, to reduce your risks, of developing dementia. Moving along to the next slide. Mood and personality changes, becoming confused, suspicious, depressed, fearful, or anxious, getting easily upset at home with friends or out of your comfort zone. That's very common with people, with signs of dementia, as a sign of dementia. Let's move along. This is just a recapitulation of the 10. But what I want to go into here is the next slide. So let's go to that. What is the importance of making the distinction between a warning sign and typical age-related change? We've said that it is difficult to do it. A question that was asked by last week is, so what? Suppose you can't make that distinction. Suppose you, as an intelligent but non-professional person, not a neurologist, if you will, you have difficulty making that distinction. Why is that important? Hold on to that question for a minute. There is an answer. And I'll give you a hint. Yes, it is important. But I think explaining why it is important is easier for me to do a couple of things before we get back to that. But I assure you that in a few minutes, we will get back to that important subject. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, this is basically just let's go to the next one, because we're going to talk now about a little bit about the stages. 4 stages are distinguished here. Asymptomatic, I think, as I indicated, there are changes in the brain that may take place as much as 20 years before there are any symptoms at all. When symptoms develop, they are usually mild. It's what we've talked about and we've been talking about for the last few minutes, mild cognitive impairment. It's important to note that mild cognitive impairment can be a sign of Alzheimer's. It is not, however, necessarily a sign of Alzheimer's. It could be related to another dementia. It could be could be related to a situation that has nothing to do with any dementia. It could, for example, be a sign, something happens because of the medication you're taking. There could be a variety of reasons for MCI, or mild cognitive impairment. Yes, it can be a sign leading to Alzheimer's dementia, but not necessarily. Okay. And it develops, if it is due to Alzheimer's, it will develop into dementia, which is mild, moderate, or severe. The distinguishing between the borderlines of mild cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's and mild dementia is not at all precise. 2 experts looking at a particular patient may not necessarily come to precisely the same conclusion about where they are. And I'll point out one other thing. We mentioned some of the warning signs during the course of mild cognitive impairment. No, it is not necessarily to have them all. If you have some of them, if you have one of them, it is important to move ahead, and we'll see why in a minute. Okay, let's move along to the next slide. The stages of Alzheimer's. This is basically just an arrow description of what we were talking about. Begins asymptomatic, and as I say, that could last for a couple of decades. It could have been advanced to mild cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. It can then further advance to dementia, which is broken down into three stages: mild, moderate, and severe. No two individuals experience the symptoms and progression of Alzheimer's in the same way. As I mentioned a moment ago, you don't have to have all of the things that we talked about when we talked about the symptoms of mild cognitive impairment. You may have some of them. People don't advance, it doesn't advance, the progression to Alzheimer's, it doesn't advance in the same way. And the same way could also mean changes in the time. The progression takes place, over years. How many years varies considerably from one person to another. Typically, people with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, the range normal from how long they live with the disease is generally 4 to 8 years. People have been known to live up to 20. So it's quite variable. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. All right, I want to talk for a minute about treatments. And let's move on to the next one. The next one's important. Alzheimer's disease was for the first time described over 100 years ago. Be precise, 1906, by Dr. Alzheimer's. For almost 100 years, for almost a century, there were no therapies for Alzheimer's. The first one appeared in 1996. 90 years after the initial description of the disease. The first several therapies, you notice they're all in basically a light orange color. They treat symptoms. They treat cognition and they enable people to function better. They treat mood to some degree. They treat behavior to some degree. They do not slow disease progression. They're certainly not a cure. So the first several therapies treated only symptoms. It was only in the last half a dozen years that treatments have been developed that actually treat the disease. In 2023, Leqembi was approved by the Food and Drug Administration. In 2024, Kisunla was approved by FDA. Both of these therapies are designed not to cure. We wish they would, but they don't. But they are designed to slow the progression of the disease. Notice also that to take advantage of Leqembi and Kisunla to slow the progression of the disease, It's better to have a diagnosis at a stage, at a mild cognitive impairment stage. That, of course, leads to the problem that we talked about. At the stage of mild cognitive impairment, it's very hard to distinguish between what is normal aging and what is a sign of dementia. That's why it's important not to pay it. That's why it's important at that stage to pay attention to the warning signs and to distinguish them from normal aging. Let's go on. Yeah. This is the response to the so what question. Why is it important to distinguish the warning signs at an early stage? One of the most important is to be able to take advantage, if people wish to do so, of disease-slowing treatments, which are now available. And it's quite likely that more will come on the horizon with the passage of time. For some people who have the anxiety and the uncertainty of knowing that there's something going on, but they don't know whether it's due to dementia, a diagnosis may relieve that uncertainty and maybe the anxiety that goes with it. It can enable people, in early diagnosis, can enable people to participate in clinical trials. And if they're fortunate, they may be able to get in on drugs that are in the testing stage, which may be useful. And for people who actually do have the disease and do get a diagnosis, it is a wake-up call and a time to begin focusing attention on your needs over the coming years. What are living arrangements you'll need and what you would prefer? Financial matters, your wills, the disposition of assets. So there's lots of reasons for diagnosis, at an early stage. Let's go on. Okay. Diagnosis in early stages is important. How do you diagnose it? Let's go on. First of all, let's dispose of this one quickly. There's no way to diagnose Alzheimer's disease. It's false. Basically, back in the early 1900s, the only definitive test was an autopsy. Nobody wants to undergo an autopsy. So for practice, it is definitely false. Yes, you can diagnose this. Yes, it can be diagnosed at an early stage. Let's go on. How is it done? There is no single test to determine whether a person is living with Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. Doctors use a combination of diagnostic tools combined with medical history to make an accurate diagnosis. Physical exam. You want to find out whether there's other things going on. They want to find out where some of the risk factors, high blood pressure, diabetes, poor diet, social disengagement. Let's go back. Let's stay here. Okay. Want to find out whether in a physical exam, whether this is true. And you want to do a neurological exam and cognitive testing. I don't want to go in exactly what's involved, but they want to find out basically what's going on with you. And lastly, you want to determine whether some biomarkers of Alzheimer's are present in the brain. These may be these are the things that may be in the brain, and they may be asymptomatic for, as I say, a couple of decades, but they're there. And yes, they can be detected. Let's go on. First of all, what are those, biomarkers or hallmarks of the disease? They're basically two different proteins. Tau, neurofibrillary tangles. They're not, when they become tangles, that's when they become a problem for Alzheimer's. But tau is normally formed by the brain, and it has a function. Beta amyloid is also formed by the brain, and it has a function. It becomes a problem when things begin to happen with it and it forms plaques. That's what this is designed to show. Tangles are a little more difficult, to show in a diagram. Let's go on. Excuse me. A little bit more again to describe the biomarkers. Beta amyloid. It's a protein that is produced by the brain naturally. It is. Scientists think that something abnormal happens with amyloid in the brain in people with Alzheimer's. Notice how vague that is. And excuse me, I think this points out something that's important. We know and have found out a good deal about Alzheimer's. There's an awful lot that we still don't know. We are pretty sure that Alzheimer's and tau in the brain, particularly when it forms, when the beta amyloid forms plaques, it becomes a problem. We also know that tau has a function in the brain cells, but they become twisted and causing tangles inside the cells. And basically what that leads to is the death of the cells. And that's basically what Alzheimer's is. That's what happens with Alzheimer's. Why these things happen, we're not sure. But we are pretty sure that when these plaques appear, when the tangles appear, and yes, they can be found by testing, that's going to be a definitive sign of Alzheimer's. Let's go on. How do you test for the biomarkers? There are basically three different tests. Spinal taps, PET scans of the brain, about looking for amyloid deposits. And very, very recently, the FDA has approved, when I say very, very recently, I'm talking within the last year, there are now blood tests that can detect the presence of these biomarkers in the brain. Moving ahead. Slowing disease progression. The first treatments to address the underlying biology of Alzheimer's disease. And we're talking here about the two anti-amyloid monoclonal antibodies that basically address the biomarkers, and they address particularly beta amyloid. And they do that by reducing the amyloid plaques in the brain. And that will slow the progression of the disease. People who may be appropriate for the treatment: people with MCI or mild cognitive impairment, or mild dementia due to Alzheimer's. Build up of amyloid plaques in the brain. Again, note, pretty important at the stage of MCI, to recognize this as a warning, recognize as a warning signs, get tested. Moving along. How is the anti-amyloid treatment administered? Intravenous infusions into a vein in the blood cells. In case of Leqembi, the infusions are every 2 weeks. I don't recall, my recollection is that in the case of Kisunla, it's every 4 weeks. And it usually involves a visit to hospitals that can do it, or an infusion therapy center. That's basically how it's done. There are side effects of the infusions. They are not, some people are totally unaffected. Some of the side effects are not major, infusion-related reactions. That may be site, at the infusion site, the site of the infusion, maybe red. It can result in some changes, in your balance. There may be falls. There may be headaches. The real issue that some people worry about is ARIA, amyloid-related imaging abnormalities. And typically what we're talking about is swelling of the brain and sometimes brain bleeds. These sound scary, and they're certainly not trivial. For the most part, they can usually be managed. They are sometimes not symptomatic at all. And they can usually be reversed. But they can be serious. So like all kinds of treatments for Alzheimer's, other forms of dementia, other maladies. If you look at television, you look at, some of the ads for all kinds of things, and they typically read, usually very quickly, a long list of possible side effects because they're obliged to do that. Yes, there are side effects of slow Alzheimer's with current technology. Let's move along. Who is a potential candidate for anti-amyloid treatment? This again this is not new. Someone with mild cognitive impairment due to Alzheimer's and a buildup of amyloid plaques in the brain. It's the amyloid plaques that the Kisunla and Leqembi are designed to diminish. FDA states there's no direct state and what type of diagnostic test should be used to identify the buildup, but tests like cerebrospinal fluid, that's basically a spinal tap. Amyloid PET imaging. They don't mention here blood tests because this slide was prepared before the very, very recent FDA approval of blood tests. Note here, FDA recommends some genetic testing before beginning the infusions. They're looking for a particular gene, APOE4. Some people have it, some people don't. Those who have it have, one, a greater risk of developing the disease. And if they have the disease, they have a greater risk of developing ARIA if they go forward with the infusions. Just to clarify, APO4E4, yes, it increases your risk of the disease, particularly if you get it from both your mother and father. But if you don't have it, that's no guarantee that you won't develop the disease. It just means that the risk is less. Okay. Notice that the infusions that I'm talking about are, let's go back just for a moment to the last one, are not approved for other dementias. They're designed to remove a biomarker for Alzheimer's. The biomarker for Alzheimer's is not a biomarker for other dementias. So it's approved only for Alzheimer's. Okay. Let's go on. I'm not going to cover this in any detail, but I did want you to know that, yes, treatments for the infusions, the Kembe, Kisunla, yeah, you can get coverage for this. Eligible for both, those eligible for both Medicare and Medicaid can receive coverage. There may be additional state requirements. I don't want to get into this too much because if you get to that stage, it's time to be talking to the Alzheimer's Association, to be talking to your insurer, to be talking to your physicians who are usually up to date and can fill you in, on whether you can get reimbursement for these infusions, and they are not inexpensive. You will want to do that. But I don't want to get into this in great detail because I don't know enough about it. And it's probably not that important to me to know it. It is something that you need to look into if this becomes a real issue. Moving ahead to the next slide. How to access the treatment. Again, this is here you go. First thing you need to do is diagnose it. Diagnose your MCI. Is it due to Alzheimer's? Or do you have mild impairment, mild dementia due to Alzheimer's? So you need a diagnosis. You need confirmation that there are amyloid plaques in the brain. You need to be talking to your doctor fairly early for a diagnosis, and he's probably going to refer you to specialists. Let's go on. This one to me is important. The blood test to detect Alzheimer's disease is an important development. Why? It is the first way of detecting the biomarkers that is not invasive and is inexpensive. It can be done for the most part in a primary care setting. And it can be done inexpensively, easily at an early stage so that available treatment options can be considered. And for those with the disease, planning, looking ahead can begin. So it's important and it's very, very recent. What happens after diagnosis? Progression is slow, insidious, and uncertain. People age 65 and older survive an average of 4 to 8 years after diagnosis. Some live as long as 20. This one, that one's fairly straightforward. This one isn't quite so straight. A person who lives from age 70 to 80 with Alzheimer's dementia will spend an average of 40% of their time at a severe stage, much of it in a nursing home. Now, notice what they're saying here. It's a person in this age range with Alzheimer's dementia. That is to say, a person who has a disease and the disease has progressed at the time you're making this determination to a stage of dementia. That's when they're likely to be spending much of their time in a nursing home. Similarly, at age 80, approximately 75% of people with Alzheimer's dementia live in a nursing home, compared with only 4% of the general population at that age. Again, we're talking to people who have dementia stage. Okay, and the long duration of this ultimately fatal disease contributes significantly to the public health impact of Alzheimer's disease, because much of that time is spent in a state of severe disability and dependence. Show the next slide, if you will. I'm actually done, but this is a forecast of next week. Next week, we're going to be talking about research. What's going on? You will notice, I think, from this fact that disease slowing therapies have only been introduced in the past few years. There's a lot of stuff going on, and you can expect more advances in the years to come. And we'll talk about this. We'll talk about some of this next week. And next week, I also want to talk about sources of support for people with Alzheimer's, people at risk for Alzheimer's, people who are care partners, helping people with the disease to live and to live as best they can and to plan and so forth. That's all next week. I'm going to stop here and stop sharing and open it to questions, comments, and such.
Thank you very much, Russ. If anyone has questions, you can put them in the chat or you're welcome to come off mute. And the link to register for next week is also in the chat.
Okay. Well, let's look at the chat.
I don't see any questions yet.
Okay. Well, then let's leave it. I mean, we have a relatively small group. I think people can raise hands or just start asking a question. Make sure you're on.
Marge, I think I see your hand up.
I have a question. Am supposed to know the answer already from the conversation. We're talking primarily about Alzheimer's, which is one of the many dementias. My husband took that amyloid blood test about a year ago, and I have numbers that I have yet to understand, and unfortunately, I don't have them in front of me. But my understanding is he does not have Alzheimer's, and they've determined it's a vascular dementia. But the conversation that we're having now, I believe, carries over not just Alzheimer's, but into the other dementias as well.
Yes.
Am I mistaken? Probably am.
I don't know that there are therapies that treat dementias other than Alzheimer's in a fashion of slowing progression.
So those new medications would not apply.
There's a lot going on in terms of research, but I do not know that there are therapies for other dementias that do what the infusions might do for Alzheimer's.
I see Alice in the chat asked to get the link emailed. Frank, do you have Alice's email?
Yeah, I can do that.
Great. We will take care of that.
I have a question.
Please go ahead. Hi,
Um,
Janet.
hi. So you have talked about the infusion treatment um, being aimed at people with mild cognitive impairment. It hasn't advanced beyond that. So does that mean that that once it advanced beyond that stage, there is no further treatment at this point?
No. The treatment is designed and is most effective for people at a mild cognitive impairment stage or mild dementia. When you get beyond the mild dementia, it is unlikely to be effective.
Okay. Okay.
Which again is, this again gets back to, why is it important to diagnose early?
And Russ, you covered this, but I think while
Sure.
there aren't treatments effective in slowing the progression, there are treatments for the symptoms.
Yes, that's right. There are several, that will treat, the functioning of people, the symptoms that they exhibit without slowing the disease, without affecting the progression, of the disease, enabling essentially a better life for people, who have a diagnosis. And typically, typically the recommendations, there are certain therapies involved, certain drugs. Aricept is the one I think that appeared at the top of that list because it was the one that was first introduced. Yeah, their effectiveness differs for different people, but yes, they do seem to have some good effects and improve the quality of life and the functioning of people, with a diagnosis of the disease. They do not slow, the progression of the disease.
I do want to be mindful of time because we are at 8:15. So, if anyone does have any final questions, I think Russ and I can hang out for a couple of minutes, if that's okay
I'm
with you, Russ.
I'm here. I'm fine. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. But thank you so much for this presentation. We're looking forward to next week. And thank you everybody for attending. You're free to go, or if you do have any questions, you're welcome to hang back. Um, and hopefully we do see you next week. But have a lovely evening.
Well, thank you for this, and we're all going biking in Europe next week, so we won't see you.
Oh, well, that sounds lovely. Have a good time.
Yeah, but we've enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Well, in some respects, actually, next week's conversation is somewhat more uplifting than today. Because
Well,
no, we're talking about research, and it's pretty likely that we're going to see better treatment. We're going to see better slowing. We're going to see treatments that can be administered, hopefully, without some of the side effects. We're going to see hopefully earlier diagnosis of the disease.
And I'll say to Marge,
It,
this is not just in the Alzheimer's. I have Parkinson's, so I worry about different dementias too. And these kinds of treatments Russell's talking about, or research advances, are going on in all areas. So hopefully vascular dementia too.
yeah.
But yeah, I'd like to hear some of these ones on Alzheimer's because other
Yeah.
people in the family worry a lot about
I
Yeah.
think we're gonna send out a recording if we can to everybody who's attended one of the sessions. So we'll keep a list and make sure if you made it to one session, you get the recordings for all of them.
it. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure.